work-life balance conundrum. Why conundrum? Well, it's a conundrum because there is no difference between work and life. And there is a huge difference between work and life. When people meet you, how do you introduce yourself? And what do they say? They say, what do you do? Or they may say, where do you live? And we identify ourselves with our work. So the first thing that is really important to do is let's acknowledge ourselves. Let's acknowledge that as head teachers, work is incredibly important to you. And it's incredibly important to society. And we need people to do this work. You've seen from this morning how important it is. You've seen what Julia said. You heard the talk earlier, how important this work is. So acknowledge the importance of it before we even get it into what work-life balance is. So I'm not a fan of this term. For me, I'd be looking for another term. Work-home balance. Work-not-work balance. Or an even better term that one of my colleagues describes it as harmony. Finding harmony in our lives. And this term has popped up. It's suddenly appeared. Where did it come from? It's been around since about the 70s, but the last 10 years you see it everywhere. And it's like some of these other terms that we see. They mean a lot, but do they help us? Do they help us to actually do anything? Or do they just give us something else to feel not so good about how we work? Work-life balance is something that we can take in a really positive way, and really can take in a way that is going to help us decide how we organise our time, or how to feel bad about ourselves and think, yeah, there's something else I'm not getting right. Something else someone else is saying you're not quite on top of. So let's see what people say. The DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, they have a definition about what work-life balance is. And they say it's about adjusting working patterns. That's okay. And then they say, just read that. Everyone can find a rhythm. I don't agree. I think it's, if not impossible, it's incredibly hard. And a statement like that doesn't help us very much. It lets us feel that we're getting something wrong. Now we know that the DTI obviously has some sort of sense of humour, because when they publish that annual work-life balance report that runs to 408 pages, they must do it firmly with their tongues in their cheeks. So, think of another definition. As I've said, harmony seems to be a good one. Choice is another one. One head teacher I work with talks about how he wants to be where he wants to be at any point in time in the day. If he's happy to be at work, it's fine. If he's happy to be at home, it's fine. It's not feeling like you want to be at the other end of your life. That doesn't help very much. So let's have a little bit of Q&A. You've had a lot of talking today so far, so have an opportunity to talk to someone else, the person next to you. I'm going to put 4 or 5 questions up, and I'll give you 30 seconds or a minute to answer that question as honestly as you feel that you would like to, and see if you have any insights about it. You've been here since Wednesday. So since Wednesday, we called the school less than twice daily. Just share that with the person next to you. Just for a few seconds. Thank you. You check your emails. Less than 5 times a day. Share that one away. He just shared with me a story about how he manages his emails and deals with them in blocks rather than be at the behest of when they come in, when they keep on bombarding us. And those who take on that practice, it's really helpful. Away from the conference, a couple of other things to discuss for a moment or two. You've got a hobby that you actually do, which means golf club covered in dust, piano lids down, don't count. You've got a hobby you actually do. Share that for a minute. In this little moment is give yourself feedback. Socialise doesn't mean necessarily an extra cup of coffee with a colleague. Have you socialised in the last month? Of course it was hard. That I probably need to ask not the week after half term, but perhaps the week before the end of term. Now think about your responses, think about the responses that you heard from your colleagues, and imagine you asked these questions to your deputies, to people in your leadership team, to your teachers, and you heard the type of responses that you gave yourselves. And now think about what advice you would give them. Would you be saying to them, sounds like you've got it all sorted, sounds like it's covered, well done, sounds like you're not quite working hard enough, you need to do a little bit more? Or it sounds like there needs to be a time when you need to turn your computer off, you need to say that lesson is planned enough, now go back. So thank you for sharing with your colleagues. We do want to find some answers to this conundrum. We know you work hard. So where do we go to look for answers? How are we going to find these things out? Well, we know the fountain of knowledge. Judy's already told us it's Wikipedia. So we go to Google and we type in work-life balance. Up pops up the Huffington Post, where everyone seems to be posting things these days. How many articles on work-life balance? 600 or so. Take a moment or two to go through those. You obviously will have a very good work-life balance if you can see through all of those. And what I find is that a lot of the advice starts with things like, all you have to do is. Which ones makes me want to scream. If all I had to do was, then I would be doing it. We would be able to manage it. And other such helpful tips and empowering suggestions and comments like, if President Obama can make it home to have dinner with his kids, why can't you? Doesn't help, does it? Other tips, what else did we see there? That it's all about the 4-hour work week. I think actually not the 4-hour week, we want the 4-hour hour. Get everything done we can. That's what we need. And the other tips, other things that I saw, I think we might need to see that. Yoga on your desk. Can you read that at the back? Can I call you back? I'm in the moment. Do your yoga at lunchtime. That's hard. Or, I read, schedule time in your Outlook calendar for a play date with your children. Which might look something like this. Fountain of all wisdom, the New Yorker cartoons. Wins every time. So these things don't help, they're not empowering. Some research was done. And some research was done with senior leaders in education and in industry and in the voluntary sector. And the question was asked, what are you not happy about in your work? And the number one thing that came up was frustration that we were at work too long and we didn't get a chance to dust down the golf clubs, to play the piano, and to spend time with our friends and families. So then the second part of the research said, you've got a secret day. You can do anything with this day. No one else knows about it. what will you do? What do you think people say? Yeah, absolutely. Get to the bottom of the list of jobs. Clear the emails, get onto the project. The golf club stay dusty, the family still stays neglected. That's what happens. And that isn't because we're bad people, that's just because we're under so much pressure, because there is so much to be done. So what do we need to do? We need to find something. And we need to not be bullied around by the empowerment work-life people who insist in an evangelical way that all you have to do is A, B or C. And what we can do is find the time to use our time better. So 2 head teachers I know who work possibly in the most proactive way. One refuses to have meetings during break time, during lunchtime, at the beginning or the end of the school day because she is on the gate, or she is at the lunch queue, or she is in the playground. And I see stand up, spend time engaging with people. That's what she does. And then whizzes through and really is focused on the paperwork at a later time in the day. So has made a strategic choice to engage as much as possible and then find time for the paperwork. Another head that I know is a great handshaker. And he spends all of his time walking around the school, shaking hands with the kids, shaking hands with the teachers, thanking, appreciating the support thing that Julie said. And again, can only do that because he has a system for getting through all of the mountains of paperwork. Now these are aspirational examples and good to hear about. So we need to find something we can do. We need to find a way we can get through our work a bit quicker, but not feel that we're doing anything wrong if it takes time to do our work. So these are the types of things that I've observed. Break it down into 3 areas. How we focus, the type of contact we have with other people, and some specifics about time. When we talk about focus, know and understand what scientists talk about are biorhythms. Know that to concentrate on any one task for more than an hour and a half is very difficult. It's why Kate gave you 5 minutes for a leg stretch after Julie's comprehensive talk. So you had just time to download, to stretch yourself before this, otherwise you'd be sitting in one place for a long period of time. So when you plan, organise your activities, think about how long you work on one task. Because if you do a task for 3 hours, you'll start making mistakes at the fag end of it. So know your biorhythms. And do things in blocks. The idea that, take the email example, I'm going to clear my emails. So my first email comes in, it's a technical question. Technical. Second email comes in, it's a data question, information, finance. So I'm in my logical framework. The next one comes in, it's a parent, it's an emotional issue. And I'm jumping, my brain is going and jumping from emotional to technical to cognitive, and it's very difficult. The brains can't work like that. Take 30 seconds to do the 6-step experiment, if you choose to. But take a pen, piece of paper, and you're going to do 2 things at the same time. Say out loud, as loud or as quietly as you can, count from 1 to 100, and whilst you are doing that, write in lowercase the alphabet, A to Z. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and write A to Z. And just see, and do it as quickly as you possibly can. Okay, let me put you out your misery there. Easy, difficult, virtually impossible. Now that's quite an extreme example. It's quite an extreme example of doing 2 things simultaneously. But a very similar thing is happening in your brain when you try and shift from an emotional response to a cognitive response to a technical response. So if you are using your time well, you will say, right, I'm going to deal with practical, functional issues over here. I'm going to deal with emotional, personal, empathetic issues over here. and then you will find you'll do both very well and very effectively. I get that's an ideal world thing, and it's something that you can look to do whenever you can, rather than all the time. So that's focus. I'm going to talk about contact. That's about how you engage with other people and your teams. So people say to me, I'm brilliant at delegation, I'm rubbish at delegation, I'm not that. One of the things, there's a great paper written by Tim Brighouse. Many of you will know, an ex-head of many local authorities, very respected. And he talks about the delegation ladder and how you delegate differently for different people according to different tasks. So it's not about your skills as a delegator, it's about you have an approach that is very helpful. Lorraine will upload that paper for you to print off if you get a moment, have a look at it. If you feel the delegation isn't a strong point, it's really worth spending a bit of time getting stuck into that. Delegation. The other thing is take your to-do list and turn it upside down. What I mean by that is not necessarily work from the least favourite job back upwards, but do you ever find that you spend your time thinking, right, what am I waiting for? Who am I waiting to come back to me for that? What's that thing that's going to happen? And then you trot around, or you go to their rooms, or you call people, or you send them messages. Are you coming back to me with that thing? So instead of, or as well as your to-do list, keep a what I'm waiting for list. Head teacher showed me this, and that's what she does. Keeps this what I'm waiting for list, goes back to that once a week and check the list, who do I need to chase? Rather than try and hold that bit in their head as well. So that's about contact. The last thing is about time, how you use your time in a couple of specific instances, one generic and one specific. So those of you who have done any coaching skills training, either with me here last year or in some of your schools or with other people, will know that there's a belief that you can have very powerful conversations, very helpful conversations in a very brief period of time. And if you can do that, then you know you can move things forward quite quickly, rather than thinking, okay, someone's come to me with an issue, there's an hour in my life I'll never see again. It doesn't have to be like that. So that's believing that. And then the second thing is physically and metaphorically having a clock in your sight line. I always carry one with me. I can see one at the back of the room. When you set up your office, you make sure you can see one so you know what the time is, and metaphorically, that means that when you are speaking to people, say, I've got 10 minutes, I've got 20 minutes, I've got an hour, I've got 10 minutes now and 10 minutes tomorrow, whatever it is. But if you are very clear, then you have some control of your time. And that conversation that might need 2 10-minute slots will be shorter, and it still will be supportive because it's clear. So that is 3 areas. Focus, how you focus, how you contact other people, and how you specifically use your time. You've heard all sorts of things today, and yesterday, and the day before, and there is so much to take away. Julie presented some outstanding information. You could have had a whole day on any one of the models that she presented you, and doubtless some of the other things you see. My encouragement to you is don't take everything. All the research shows that when we try and implement a whole load of things at one time, nothing sticks. So pick one thing that you would do, either on the basis of what I've talked about, or what Julie talked about, or what you've heard over these last couple of days. One thing that is going to make a significant impact on your time and help sort out the work-home balance. What's the one thing that comes to the forefront of your mind now? Think about it and just share it for 1 minute with the person next to you. One thing you'll do. The reason for suggesting that you share one thing publicly and say it rather than write it down is because the research shows that committing publicly to an action gives it something like 35% more possibility of it happening. Does anyone know about the stick.com phenomenon? Anyone? No? There's a website called stick.com, spelled with 2 Ks for some strange reason, and people go on it and make a public commitment to give up the smoking or take up some exercise or stop shouting at the kids or whatever it is. And making that public commitment means that it's much more likely to happen. So the fact that you've shared it with a colleague who may or may not email you in 6 months' time saying, did you do that thing? You've made that commitment, you've said it out loud. So congratulations. To finish off, what you've seen over this last 25 minutes or so is this belief that the work-home balance is something that if we hear the negativity about it, we can add it onto the list of stuff we ain't doing well. If we hear it in a positive and encouraging way, we can hear this is a job that is very important and it absolutely takes lots of time, and possibly with a little nuance here or there we might find a bit of extra time. So there's 3 things that are incredibly important to do just to overlay this. The first thing is it's about consensus. So if you think, you hear this and you think, that's all well and good, but my work is my life, I'm doing a 90-hour week and it's all about the kids and the things we heard this morning means that I need to be there as long as I possibly can. That's absolutely fine. And get consensus from the people in your life who need to agree to that. Which means a frank and open conversation. It means you have to be saying to your partners, your children, your friends, your family, this is important, I need to be here. And you have to have and get through whatever the pain of that might be. Rather than rushing and hoping it's not going to be a bad day when you walk through the door. The second thing is have some self-reflection. Self-awareness is incredibly important. So think about the things you've heard about your personality types. Are you someone who is very cognitive, very processy, spends lots of time talking? Or are you quite instinctive, quite knowing? You can explain things quickly. Do you lose time in that way? Are you not as assertive as you'd like to be? You've heard about assertiveness. So does that mean it takes you ages to do certain things where you have to find a bit of courage? Know where are your strengths and where are your foibles and what's the things that you need to slightly adjust so that the things that are challenging don't take as much time. And the final one there is challenge means have someone to challenge you. In a respectful way, have someone who will say to you, you know what, I think it is time you went home. I think it is time for you to stop. If we don't have that, we then are the only people who are moderating ourselves, and that's incredibly hard. This has been a lot that you've taken in over 3 days, all sorts of information. My encouragement, as I said, choose one thing, get stuck in, see what difference it makes to you, your life, your working life, your colleagues' working life, and then have a success story and share it with someone else. And that is, of course, if you've got the time. Thank you very much.